After the January ice storm, there is a lot of debris in the city of Paducah and a lot of trees that need some attention. We're going to talk to 3 tree experts, learn a little bit about the trees and the varieties, and learn how to safely use one of these. I'm Public Information Officer Pam Spencer, and Your City at Work is up next. I'm Public Information Officer Pam Spencer on this very windy day out here after the ice storm. It's a beautiful day, but we've got a lot of work to do in the city of Paducah as well as the county in cleaning up the debris, pruning trees, and finding out how to take care of your trees, what's the best varieties for this area. So I have 3 experts that we're going to be talking to today. We're going to first start with Haden with the UK Extension Office. And hello, David.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great today. Now, tell us about the Extension Office. What is your title there, your roles there at the Extension Office, and where is the Extension Office? It's a great resource a lot of people may not know about.
All 120 counties in the state do have an extension office to meet the needs of the local community. Here in McCracken County, we're located on Olivet Church Road, just across from West Park Village, and we have 4 program areas that we represent. I represent the horticulture, and you know, anyone that has horticulture questions, whether it's for home horticulture or commercial horticulture, I work with that group. And then also, because there are a lot of homeowner questions, we have a large Master Gardener program of volunteers that help address those homeowner questions. We also have an ag agent to work with the farmers. We have a family and consumer science agent. She was really doing a lot of work right after the ice storm. What do you throw away? What can you save? And then we also have our 4-H department. So there's a huge resource there at our office and in every county of the state.
So can people just call the office or come by if they have questions or if they have pictures of trees in their yard? What can they do?
I've been getting a lot of phone calls as well as walk-ins and emails. People are bringing me photos of their trees. Where do I make the cuts? What do I do? Is this tree worth saving? And you know, bringing a photo in, I can mark on the photo where you should make the cut, how you should evaluate the tree. Walk-ins are nice, you know, especially if you bring me a photo. Sometimes I can't tell enough by the photo, and I can really tell that a home visit is going to be the most effective measure for me to come out and consult with you. Our services are free. We do free services throughout the year, whether it's a home visit, educational classes and workshops, free publications, and then we also have workshops where we bring speakers in from across the state and across the country that we do have to pay, charge a minimum fee for their services.
Is there a website that people can go to?
Yes. The website, it's easily found. If you go to the Google search engine and you type in McCracken County Extension Paducah, and then you can see our full website. And we do have an interactive website where it's all the time updating, and we are trying to get more interactive with Facebook accounts and links there. So all the time, once a week or so, check it out and make sure that you know what's going on and you're not missing anything in the community.
Let's go back and look at the big picture. Now, this ice storm was one of a kind. Talk a little bit about just how severe this was for the area and kind of what people are saying. Is this something that they've seen in recent history?
Well, there's nothing typical about what we have seen over the last month or so. You know, we experienced a major ice storm of this magnitude in 2003 in the Lexington area. And so the specialists and those university professors that I work with in Lexington are giving me a lot of guidance as to what we're dealing with here and how we should progress in the future. But if you ask people around this area, have you ever seen this before? No one is going to tell you yes, because it's unusual. This is kind of rated as a 100-year storm. I have been hearing people say very outrageous things like, I'm going to take down this tree because I'm afraid that it's going to knock out power in the future. And the tree may be in good health, There are some criteria to look at for the tree and determine if the tree needs to come down, but there are also great benefits from having a healthy tree in the landscape.
Okay, we'll talk a little bit about trees in your landscape, and a lot of people have taken down a lot of trees. A lot of people are trying to figure out how to re-landscape their yard. What are some of the big, broad picture things that you need to be thinking about? I know size of the tree, size of your yard. What are some of those things that maybe could have prevented some of this damage if a homeowner had really thought about some of the layouts first?
One of the major things that we could have done to prevent a lot of this damage is to avoid trees that have been topped. Topping trees is typical for this area.
Right.
What I mean is typical. It's never okay to top a tree, but it's very common. We see that with the power companies trying to protect the power lines. First thing what we should do is never plant a tree near a power line. Also, pick a tree that's relative to the size that you're planting it in. A small tree should be planted next to a house or near a house, 20, 30, 50 feet away from the house. A large white oak that may get 70, 80 feet tall by 80 feet wide should not be planted anywhere close to the house or a power line or a road. So you should be thinking about why do we want trees? Trees should provide shade for our home. It should provide some wind breaks for our home, not damage our home. So if you select a small tree, such as a dogwood, a serviceberry, a redbud, those are some trees that can be located next to the home, near the home, without causing catastrophic damage in a storm of this magnitude.
Did you see any varieties that really saw a lot of damage? What are some of the weaker ones that just couldn't stand up to this ice storm?
Well, Bradford pear, if you talk about straight species Bradford pear, they just dissolved. Basically, you saw the tree in 4 or 5 pieces spread on the ground. That one is not only bad against the storm and break it in the storm, but it is starting to show up on the West Kentucky Parkway as an invasive species. So I don't want anyone to go back and plant Bradford pear just because of the beauty and the availability of them. They are available and they are cheap. They're a beautiful tree. People like them and they're drawn to them. So, we don't want to fight nature. You don't want to fight the nature that people have, because they do provide a very pretty spring flower and then nice shape and then fall color. But there's a variety of the Bradford pear, the Cleveland Select pear, and it did hold up much better in the storms.
And it looks similar to the Bradford?
It is. It looks very similar. I mean, it is a pear. It is a calorie pear, but it is a cultivar, the Bradford pear, that's much stronger. Where we saw in the same landscape, river birch just fold over and become useless in the landscape. The Cleveland Select pear, they actually stood up with minimum damage. Now, that's not my favorite plant, but I realize that people are going to go back to those because they are fast growing and there are advantages to that plant. But look at those species of plants that are slow growing. Dogwoods are good, and there are dogwoods for sun and there are dogwoods for shade. And so being right here, in Paducah, there's 2 things we're known for, and that's the quilts and that's the dogwoods. And so, embrace our community's love for those things and replant dogwoods. There are some for sun and some for shade.
Now with dogwoods, a lot of people have dogwoods in their yard. I have a dogwood in my yard. It had 2 branches broken. Did they fare fairly well because they are sheltered basically under other trees?
Yes. Dogwoods and all those smaller species of trees, they did fare very well during the storm. They are not as massive and they didn't have the massive weight load up high. And so as they were being weighed down by the ice storm, they just didn't have the massive weight that some of our oaks and larger trees like the sycamores and the maples had. So a lot of the understory plants were not only sheltered by the taller plants, but they just didn't have the massive weight that their long limbs were supporting.
I know a lot of my taller trees, the sycamores in my yard, they did top and break off, and my dogwood did fairly well, so I think I'm going to go back and plant another dogwood.
Right. That's a good species. Now, we don't want to do all just small trees. Like I said, there's a benefit from having large, medium, and small trees in the landscape for the eco system in our community, the wildlife and the birds and the squirrels, and everything is going to work together, and so we don't want to eliminate species. I would encourage people to put some larger plants back in the landscape, such as the oak. The willow oak did seem to do pretty well during the storm. Red oaks, northern red oaks, did pretty nice. There's some that did sustain a lot of damage, like the tulip poplar and the sycamores, but this storm is so unusual. We should not shy away from some of those trees that were broken so severely during the storm, because we need to plant that for future generations, and so our landscape is still diverse. Diversity in the landscape is going to make our community and our environment much healthier, just having lots of diversity for wildlife and for pleasure.
Okay, Dava Haden, thank you so much for joining us, and you're a great resource for people, so definitely call the UK Extension Office over on Olivet Church Road in McCracken County. Now, coming up next, I'm going to talk to a certified arborist. You're going to find out what that means, and we're going to find out the anatomy of a tree. I'm now joined by Kathy Keeney, our landscape superintendent for the City of Paducah, and a certified arborist, which that's a big phrase, big term. What is a certified arborist, Kathy?
A certified arborist has gone through an extensive testing program through the International Society of Arboriculture.
Okay.
They have met or exceeded the standards, which are extremely rigorous. The test itself has a 50% fail rate in it.
Wow.
So most people don't pass the first time around. They can take the different disciplines that they have failed and go ahead and test for just those and then receive their certification.
Now, a lot of contractors say that they have a certified arborist there, certified arborist on staff. What should people be looking for instead of just having a contractor say, hey, I've got a certified arborist? What should they be looking for?
They actually carry a license, an ISA certified arborist license, and it does have the year on it. I don't have mine on me. I left mine at home. Unfortunately, bad daughter, bad child. But what it is it says that basically in order to maintain your certification, you have to go ahead and go through all of the continuing education, safety, tree biology, tree physiology, knowing how to properly handle tools. It's very extensive, and these CEUs are very important, and that's part of it. You know that somebody who has their arborist certification is constantly going through trainings to keep up to date and to learn more as they go along.
Okay, well, we're going to talk basic anatomy of a tree. Basically, I know trunk, there's some roots down there and branches and leaves. But there's a lot more to a tree. Point out some of the basic things, and this will help people if they've got a question and they want to call in about how do I prune.
Exactly.
They can explain the proper terminology, kind of point things out. And we have some other features here on this tree. First, what is this tree? What kind of tree is this?
This tree, believe it or not, is a Bradford pear that pretty much almost survived.
Wow, it's just got a few broken branches.
Well, we had to remove some of the branches that had broken back to a safe spot. This is an improper cut, but we had to do it in order to maintain safety in the landscape.
Now, what makes it improper?
It was cut in front or behind the collar. If you look at this particular branch, this shows it very well. You have a swelling down here, and it's like the knuckle on my thumb.
Okay. And I can see the swelling right here to about that point.
And this right here, this is the bark ridge collar.
Okay.
That's the ridge. This is the collar. So you have the branch here, the collar here. If you cut, you want to cut just in front of this swelling by about 1/4 to 1/2 inch. That will allow for proper healing. This one was cut in the proper spot.
And so this is healed?
Well, okay, let me back up. Trees never heal. They will scar over. And what it's doing is every year it adds another layer. You know how every year they add another ring. Well, this is part of that ring process. Eventually it will scar totally closed, and like this one down here, you'll see that bark has actually started to grow back over it.
How long did it take? Do you know when these cuts were made?
This cut was made about 3 years ago.
Okay.
So it does scar over. This one was probably made about 4 to 5 years ago.
Now, what's this cut up here that you said was behind the collar? Is it going to scar over like this, or what's
No,
going
it
to happen
won't.
with it?
You'll notice that it'll scar here and it'll scar here, but it'll have a slash through here. That allows more rot to get in.
So we've maybe compromised the health of the tree a little?
Right, but since this one will probably be removed because of the total amount of damage, then, you know, we're just removing the initial hazard at this point.
Okay.
We may go ahead and keep the tree for another year or two, depending on our schedule, but eventually we will have to remove it.
Wow. Talk about some more of the anatomy. What is something else that would help people as they're explaining anything about a tree, since we've got the trunk, the collar, and the branch area?
Exactly. A lot of people don't understand what we tend to refer to in the trade as laterals.
Okay.
This is a lateral.
Okay.
This is also a lateral. If I say I'm going to trim something back to a lateral, that means I'm removing a branch back to another branch that's larger, or that is at least 1/3 the diameter of the branch that we're trimming off.
Okay.
And that's the rule of thirds.
Ah.
So if you know those terms, you can get a lot done. If I want to remove, say there's a branch over here,
Okay.
and it's a fairly large branch, but if I wanted to remove this branch because of all the damage it had sustained, and this branch was not damaged, this upper branch is more than 1/3 the diameter of this lower branch. So I could remove that safely, and that would not interrupt the flow of carbohydrates to that section. You wouldn't have water sprouting going on.
But what if somebody just said, well, let's just whack off this whole branch here from about down here? What would that do to the tree? Even though it's only damaged in a couple spots.
At this point, Mother Nature has pruned a lot.
Right.
And safely, what we like to do is we like to remove no more than 1/4 to 1/3 of the entire canopy of a tree.
Okay.
Or it can cause problems. You don't have enough energy made to support the entire tree.
Because the tree gets its energy from the leaves?
From the leaves.
Okay. And so if you start cutting off all the canopy, I know in my yard, I have one tree, I think it's an old ornamental plum, and it's basically just a stick up in the air. Is it going to survive?
We'll look at it.
So I shouldn't take it down if it's
no,
not a
it
hazard.
It might. It depends on the amount of area that you're going to have left.
Okay.
And it might survive. That's one of the things I'm trying to get across to people at this point is trees might survive even though they've lost over 50% of their canopy.
So don't just start dropping trees left and right.
Now we do have a tree over here that we will have to drop, and it has lost, I'd say it's lost 80% of its canopy.
Well, let's walk over there. Let's take a look at this tree. This tree that we're looking at has a little bit of damage, but not too bad, right?
Right. This one has a few limbs that we'll have to remove. We have a cracked branch up here that's caused some problems. This is one where we'll go back to the rule of thirds and remove back to that branch that's going out below, because it's at least 1/3 the diameter of the branch we'll be removing. We've already removed a couple of branches that were cracked all the way back to this main leader, but all in all, it's still a healthy, safe tree.
It's going to survive.
It will survive.
But
it's a survivor.
Its little friend over there is not going to survive.
No,
Let's walk down
no.
to its pitiful partner.
It's definitely had some problems.
And this is the same type of tree?
Yes, this is the same type. It's an ornamental hawthorn, and you can see we've lost this branch completely. We lost branches here, here, and here, and they were the major branches. The only thing left is this little spur here, this one, and this one. And they're basically water sprouts that have just come up.
Okay.
They're weak wood. They'll never make anything really sound.
Okay. So this one, it's not really a wait and see. It's just not going to make it?
It won't make it. No, it's just not going to.
I've got a question about this branch. If the rest of the tree was pretty good and you saw a jagged edge like this, does it help to cut and clean it up? Does it help
would
the tree?
help to come in and just clean it a little more than this. This will allow for more disease and insect invasion. So we want to make sure that we clean that up as much as possible, make the smallest wound possible.
Okay.
And it is a wound. Remember, this is a living organism. But you make the smallest wound possible, and eventually, if it were a healthy tree, it would scar over like this,
Now,
which
this
gives
one
us the donut.
Okay. But would this close eventually?
This would close eventually
'Cause it
if
was
this
a
tree were
proper
to
cut.
survive.
Yeah.
This one, however, was not a proper cut. You can see it scarred here and it's scarred here, but it's not scarring down here.
Okay. And so this just causes an area so that diseases could get into it.
Diseases can get into it. You'll have rot that sets in, and a certain amount of rot is acceptable. But in small trees like this, even the smallest amount of rot can be an issue. That's not to say that the tree wouldn't be sound, and it's not to say that the tree wouldn't survive. But this one, I mean, you know, as a friend of mine used to say, it's gone to glory.
Yeah, there's not much left of it. So, but for the most part, a lot of trees you can just kind of wait and see what happens in the spring.
Exactly. And it might be that you don't have the funds right now to take down everything that needs to be taken down. Remove the hazards, and you can take them down eventually.
Okay. Well, Kathy, thank you for joining us. I think we're going to find some City of Paducah Public Works crews, and they're out actually pruning some of the trees in the city. We're going to take a look at how they're pruning and just get a look at some of the work that they're doing. Now, the homeowners have a lot of work to do at their places, but the City of Paducah has a lot of work to do in its city parks as well as the City of Paducah property. So we're joined now by Les Evans, who's the ground supervisor in the Public Works Department. And Les is going to tell us a little bit about what the Public Works crews are doing. And hi, Les, we're down here at 2nd and Broadway. Tell us what you're having some of the guys in the crews do.
Pam, we're working in conjunction with the street crews and doing our regular activities. As far as basically getting rid of the brush, the limbs, everything that's came down, as much as hazards that we can reach and get rid of. We've been doing this ever since the ice storms began. We've started out working 12-hour shifts, and we've worked up to this point where we're finally back to at least to somewhat of a regular schedule, clearing the right-of-ways, the alleyways, where everybody can get around and see our city.
And this is a huge area. When you start thinking about the city's right-of-ways, the city property, riverfront, a lot of area, it's a lot of area you guys have got to start clearing, getting rid of the hazards, and trying to make piles of debris.
It's miles and miles of roads. I'm not sure specifically how many miles there is, but there's a lot that we take care of. And my crew's helping with the street department because there is so much debris out there that needs to be cleaned up.
Now, what's the priority right now? There is so much debris, you have to make a priority list.
Correct. Basically, priorities have been, we've taken care of the main roads, we've taken care of most of the alleys, and now we're in the process of taking care of our parks and our nature trails, our areas that people like to come and enjoy, spend a day. Of course, that's going to take some time still.
And you're going to probably have to go to some areas more than once because you first need to just get rid of the hazards.
Correct, yeah. Right now all we're doing is just removing the brush. We're not making final cuts, we're not making the prune cuts. That will come back, we'll come back at a later time, or possibly some of that may be done by the contractors that actually come in as a possibility as well.
Well, tell us about the crews that you have out here working. This is 2nd and Broadway. You've got crews pruning, there's a bucket truck. Let's just kind of look around and see what we've got going on.
Over here, they're basically just going through, this is one of our, downtown is a high visibility area. Just going through and making some final little prunes on the crepe myrtles here, taking out where some of the split branches are at, removing that.
And Kathy Keeney's out there,
Kathy's
the
out
certified
there.
arborist.
She's making sure that they're making those correct cuts and that they don't damage the integrity of that crepe myrtle that they're working on.
And now they're loading them into the truck and I guess going to the compost facility?
Yes, these right here, most of it we're trying to stack, but in an area like this we really can't stack because of the traffic and everything. We would create more of a hazard. So in this case we are hauling this off to the compost facility.
Well, I think the next thing that we want to talk about is chainsaw safety. So I think we're going to stop for a second
sure.
and get a crew over and talk a little bit about chainsaws.
Yeah, sounds good.
A lot of people are buying chainsaws for the first time in their lives and trying to use them outside. So Les is back again to tell us a little bit about chainsaw safety and just a few little pointers. I know a lot of people are buying these chainsaws and they really need to be very careful.
Correct. Basically, you know, a lot of people just have trouble starting the chainsaws.
They are hard to start.
Some safety gear items that you probably need to look for is definitely want to have chaps.
Okay.
Basically, that it won't stop the chainsaw totally, but it will keep hopefully from getting injured. That'll bind the chainsaw up. Generally, if you're working underneath the trees, you're going to need to have headgear and then, of course, ear protection because the chainsaws are loud and they do create a lot of noise.
And foot protection.
And foot
Don't
protection.
go out there in just little tennis shoes.
Steel toe shoes is preferable.
Okay.
You definitely don't go out in boots. Would be ideal. That way you've got some form of backup.
Okay.
Basically, on a lot of the chainsaws is you know, you've got your oil, your gas mix,
Okay.
and of course your bar oil that goes in here. And of course this has already been checked out, and they've been using this one. We'll give a little demonstration here in a little bit, but basically before you start a chainsaw, you're going to set it, you're going to choke it,
Okay.
you're going to set it down on the ground, and you're going to crank it.
Okay. And Jim's going to do a demonstration.
Jim's going to do us a demonstration after it cranks. Generally, basically, you'll go up and set it at a different position. That's generally if they read their owner manuals, they're very helpful.
Okay.
But when they're cold, they generally have to be started. I joke about Jim. Jim's, like I say.
Now introduce Jim. We have Jim over here who's ready
Kennedy,
to go.
Jim Kennedy is actually our sexton out at the cemetery.
Okay.
But he's one of my 13 men that I have that work for me over there underneath me, and Jim's been a whiz at taking these down. You know,
Yeah.
if
There's a tree that has to go down.
Jim's the man that sometimes we'll send.
Well, we've got a tree behind us that Kathy Keeney just a few minutes ago told us that is going to have to come down.
Correct.
There's no wait and see on this tree.
Nope.
What do you need to look at when you're trying to cut down a tree? And then we're going to let Jim cut it down. What's the best way to take down? This is a small tree, but
This
what's
is
the
a
best
small
way?
tree. Generally, if he had more canopy up here, you're going to work from your top down.
Okay.
Occasionally, you know, depending on the angle, a lot of times we'll notch them and then we'll fall up from the other side and drop them.
Okay.
A lot of it depends. This is a pretty much easy. He's going to make him basically a couple of cuts there, and you'll probably, the way this one is, if it ain't a real, wood varies a little bit. Some trees are a little bit rougher than others, but let's just show him how it's done.
Okay, we're going to end with this was a hawthorn. Is that
This was a hawthorn.
It was a hawthorn. Okay, Jim, you get a tree.